Word now. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Diana Colin. We are waiting for folks to join us. So if you can use the chat box to introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, and your organization, we will get started shortly. Aurora, good morning. Hi, Liliana. Daniel, Daniel from COFEM. Hi, Juan Carlos from Inner City Struggle. Hi, Adrian. Rosie Salazar from Mujeres Unidas Sirviendo Activamente. Series from Trust South LA. Rava from the Cambodian Family. Lauren K from Cal Nonprofits. Welcome, everybody. If you just joined us, we are asking for folks to introduce themselves in the chat with your name, pronoun, and organization. Hello, Heidi from Asian Youth Center. Natalie from CCF. And I know we have a really packed agenda, so I'm actually going to get us started, and folks will join as they come in, and we'll remind them in the chat to introduce themselves. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Diana Colin, a she, her, and I am the Civic Engagement Program Officer at the California Community Foundation. Welcome to our Voter Engagement and Strategies in LA County training. As a reminder, this is a training that is being co-hosted by California Community Foundation, the Weingart Foundation, and Liberty Hill. Our partnership today features the LA County Registrar Recorder Office, County Clerk. We are 41 days until the June primary, and this is part of a series of civic engagement trainings to get us ready for the June primary in LA County. The fourth and final training will be next week, on Thursday, same time. That training will be featuring Mindy Romero, who will walk us through a ballot tracking tool. So after this meeting, after this webinar, you will receive a post-training email with the link to register to our final training, and you will also receive a link to a survey. We want to know about your organization's 2022 electoral efforts. Are you doing field work? Are you knocking on doors? Are you having candidate engagement? Will you be having a texting campaign? We want to know it all and hear all about it. So just heads up, that email is coming after this training today. And so for our training today, we have a series of phenomenal speakers. The county registrar will be talking about voting rights in LA County. We will have an election overview, talking about overcoming challenges, engaging voters, and developing a community partnership. But before we head there, I want to introduce the Vice President of Public Partnerships for Liberty Hill, Alma Sayed, for our welcome remarks. So Alma, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, happy Thursday to all of you. Thank you so much, Diana, for CCF's partnership in ensuring that these trainings take place. And thank you so much to Weingart for this collaboration to work with the voters in LA County so they have all the information that they need as we head into election season. And deep thanks to our county partners for today's training and all of the work that you're doing on the ground to make sure that voters have what they need, both by information as well as infrastructure in the county to do this work. So we're headed into an election year. The reason all of us are here is because we know how important that is, how much it matters who is in office. We're in a kind of global moment in the country where conversations around voter suppression, redistricting, strategies around who is voting and who isn't are at the top of all of our minds. And for better or worse, we're not protected from that entirely in a place like Los Angeles County. That's why today's training is so crucial. I'm new to Liberty Hill, but I'm not new to the work of civic engagement. And part of the reason I joined the Liberty Hill team is because of its deep investment in making sure that voters know what their rights are, how to engage in the county, and know how central it is to understand where those points are in an election cycle so they can directly engage. An hour ago, I just came from a press conference with one of our partners in the work, showcasing and spotlighting a 400-unit building with some of the most difficult habitability conditions I've ever seen, and I'm trained as a housing lawyer: raw sewage, cockroaches, fleas. Who is in office is going to matter in terms of how quickly we can get a response to what's happening in that building. So it matters who's in office, and that means it matters that we know our rights and know everything we need to know to vote and engage in this coming year. Thank you so much, Diana, for giving me a moment to say hi to everyone, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Thank you, Almaz. And for those of you who joined late, we're welcoming you and asking you to introduce yourself, your pronoun and your organization via chat. Today, we will be using the Q&A feature to answer any questions. Participants do not have access to unmute themselves, and so it's for us to keep track of all of the questions. Please use the Q&A feature, and we'll have a couple reminders throughout the presentation. And now I want to hand it over to Monica Flores, who is the Acting Assistant Recorder County Clerk. Monica?
Diana, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. So before I begin, I actually want to introduce some of my colleagues that are here with me that will be sharing some valuable information with you today. So why don't we start, Angel, and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Angel Leja. I am part of the legislative team here at the Registrar Recorder County Clerk's Office, and I'll pass it along to Elva.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, I'm part of the Register Recorder's Office as well, Community and Voter Outreach, and I'll be presenting the voter rights for the voters. And I'll pass it to Leah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Leah Kolanjian. I am also in Community and Voter Outreach, and my portion of the presentation will be on developing a community partnership. I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Sanchez, and I am the Communications Manager here at the Registrar's Office, and I'll be touching on the variety of ways we will be engaging voters in this upcoming election. It's very nice to be here. I'll pass it back to you, Monica.
Thank you, team. So for those of you that don't know, we at the Register Recorder County Clerk's Office are responsible for the administration of all elections within LA County, and that includes local, state, and federal elections. And as you all are very well aware, we have a very important election coming up in June. Today, we're going to provide an overview of our process for administering elections in LA County. We'll share the information on voter registration eligibility, provide an overview of the upcoming election, and share some challenges that we see in election administration, how we reach out to our voters, and finally, how you can engage in this process and assist us in overcoming some of the challenges. You as advocates and resources for the community are an integral part of the democratic process. You play a key role in upholding election integrity and access. You also play an important role in maintaining our community informed about the process and informing us about the needs of the community. I look forward to today's discussion and look forward to a long-term partnership with your organization. Just a few logistics. After each speaker, we will take a couple questions from the Q&A and try to address those. If we do not get to them at that point, we will get to them in our Q&A session after all speakers have presented. We want to make sure that we have enough time for all of you. So again, type your questions in the Q&A feature, and we will address them either there or later throughout the presentation. So with that, well, one more actually comment is I want to introduce our colleague Jerome, who is kind of a little behind the scenes, but he'll be driving our presentation today. So thank you, Jerome. You can go ahead and bring it up, and I'm going to hand it over to Elva to kick off the first portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for having us here in this presentation. It's very enthusiasm to be here and educate all the communities that we have, not only the ones that we work with, but we're always looking to partnership with a lot of you guys and help you in any way possible that we can, especially moving forward with the elections coming up. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk about voter rights. Who can register to vote, and how do you know if you can register and be eligible to vote? And as a voter, what are your rights? Next slide. Okay, so we have a few icons here. I'm going to go over them. First of all, you have to be a U.S. citizen, so you can be eligible to register and vote. You have to be, you don't have to be serving time in a state prison or federal for conviction of a felony. Of course, you have to be a California resident and not currently found mentally incompetent to vote by a court. And of course, you have to be 18 years of age to be eligible to vote. But, and we have a pre-registration. So back in 2016, SOS 35 vote count statewide, allowing the 16 and 17 years old to pre-register. After completing those registration, it will make them active by the time that they turn 18. What are some of the other rights that people have to be registered voters? Voters who have currently unhoused or experiencing homeless can always register to vote. We have a few programs with these communities. Actually, in the recall election 2021, we had a vote center in Skid Row. It was a pleasure for us to be there, bringing our services to that community. And we're always here to approach and help other communities as well. Not only we do vote centers as your request, there's criteria you have to follow. At the end of this training, you're gonna see some contacts where you'll be able to decide if you wanna go ahead and do this or if you wanna learn a little bit more. We also have Flex and mobile as well. Flex is like a pop-up. Sometimes the community doesn't wanna or doesn't have the chance to go to the vote centers, so we offer these services to you guys. So if you know that your community doesn't have the accessibility to go to a vote center, we can accommodate you with those services, and you just have to reach out to us. We're always allowed to partner with a lot of you guys. Some of the, so you might ask yourself, so someone that doesn't have a house, what address do I use for the registration form? Okay, so what we need from these persons is that we only need the cross street from where they're staying. Again, homelessness, sometimes they tend to move from one day to the other, but as long as we have those cross streets where they're staying that day or a week, we can provide them with the vote by mail, or also we have to have a mailing address. There's also Good Samaritans, there's community partners, there's churches where they can provide them with an address so they can get their ballot. At the end of the day, we have to provide them a ballot, so where do we need to send them? The reason why we need the cross streets for these persons is because we need to present them and know what are they eligible to vote. Also, let's see. I mean, it could be a PO box as well. But for sure, it has to be a mailing address and those cross streets. On the top, I missed number 3, identification. If they can provide an ID or the last 4 digits of their social. Worst case, when in doubt, just fill it out. Let us handle the form when we get them in our office, and our staff could process them. Sometimes they won't have them on hand. Just give them the form. have them register, and we'll decide in our part if they are really eligible to vote or not. Next slide. Some of the other rights that we have for people that are incarcerated. In 2020, November 2020, Prop 17, voter rights was approved, allowing all the incarcerated people to vote being on parole. So who can? So there are some inmates that can be inside the jail and still have the right to register and vote. People that are on probation, people that are on mandatory supervision, released on the community supervision, and all those other issues that they are eligible to vote. They can qualify and be a registered voter if they only have serving a misdemeanor sentence inside the jail. That's fine. It's considered like a probation misdemeanor felony. So they still have the right to vote. In the past elections, we were able to bring our services to the inside of the jails, women's jails. We also have a program with LA Free to Vote, ODR, which we're gonna go inside the jails on April 27th to offer our services to have them register to vote and make them aware of the rights that they have. Some of these Californians don't know the rights, so they feel that, oh, I was in jail, I got out, and I'm still now qualified. So we're there to provide our services and have them, giving them the right and giving them the tools that they need to register and vote. I mean, I wish everybody could vote, but in this case, if they are currently serving state, federal prison with a conviction of a felony, they are not able to vote. Next slide. And now I'm open for a few questions if you have any, before I pass it over to my colleague, Angel. Okay, so Angel's gonna talk to you guys about election overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Elva. So hi, everyone. And again, my name is Angel, and I'll be talking a broad overview of the election coming up. Okay, next slide, Jerome. Sweet. Okay, so here are some key dates to keep in mind and to notate. On May 5th, the county registrar will be sending out all vote by mail ballots to registered voters. And on the same day, ballot drop boxes will be opened up to voters. On the 23rd of May, it is the voter registration deadline. Any new voter who misses the deadline will not be issued a vote by mail ballot. However, any eligible voter may still vote at any vote center and also register at any vote center. The first vote centers will open up on May 28th. So this will be the 11-day vote centers. Then on June 4th, all vote centers will be open. So on this day, 4-day vote centers will be added on to the 11-day vote centers. And the primary election is June 7th, a Tuesday. And the vote centers will close on this day at 8 p.m. So there is a deadline for vote by mail to be postmarked, dropped off at a ballot drop box or at a vote center by 8 p.m. on June 7th. So that's very important to also notate. Okay. So throughout the county, we will have 400 ballot drop boxes and 640 vote centers. And to reiterate, there are 11-day vote centers. There's 120 of them and 524-day vote centers. And all this information could be found on our website at lavote.gov. The nearest ballot drop box locations will be included in your vote by mail packet. And a separate mailing will be issued to every registered voter that will have the closest or nearest vote center to your residence. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is some more information. So all voters can participate in this election regardless of party preference. Any voter can vote for the candidate of their choice. Candidates are not nominated by the political party in this election. If a candidate has a preferred political party, that party name will appear on the ballot as a reference. And it's important to distinguish that this primary election is different than the presidential primary, which is party nominated. This one is not party nominated. So here are some of the offices, some of the offices that will be on the ballot. So statewide, voter nominated offices will range from governor to lieutenant governor, secretary of state, to United States representatives, United States senators, state assembly members as well. For state nonpartisan office, there is the superintendent of public instruction. And of course, on the local office level, there are some other ones. So there are two LA County Board Supervisor districts up for election, District 1 and District 3. There's the LA County Sheriff, Assessor, and some Superior Court judges, and other local districts and city councils will also be on the ballots. Next slide. So here is some special attention to put on to on the public. So there are 2 U.S. Senate contests on the ballot for this election. The first contest which will be on the first question is to fill the regular election, is to fill the full 6-year term ending in January 2023 for the U.S. Senate. And on the right, you're going to see an example of the ballot that the voters will be able to see or will have. On the second contest, it is to choose who will remain in office who will finish the current term ending January 3rd, 2023. Voters may vote for both contests. So that is something to distinguish. So there might be confusion why there might be 2 U.S. Senate contests, but it is for the same seat. And this explains why. The first one is to fill the regular term, which is a 6-year term. And the second one is to finish this current term, which ends in January 2023. Okay. So similar to the previous one, this one also has some more complexities. So there was a Citizens Redistricting Commission in 2020 and 2021, and a lot of the districts have been redistricted. And this election, this special primary election, there was a special primary election, in April 5th in the current Assembly District 62, which was for the remainder of the current term due to a vacancy in this seat. In June, in this upcoming election, this election will be called, it is a special general election, which I will refer to as a runoff, and it will be on the primary election this June. So just to explain a little bit the distinguishes here. So everything on your screen, if you focus on the map, there is a red line. So everything within that red line is the current Assembly District 62. People in this district will have the choice to vote who will finish this current term. And if you go to the right side of the screen, there is a shaded area, which is a green striped. That is the new Assembly District 62, which is new because of the redistricting. Voters in this area will have the choice to choose who will fill the new AD 62 seat. And if you go back to near the red area, there is a blue striped area. In this area, that is the new Assembly District 61. So members in that blue striped area will have the choice, or will have the choice to choose who will fill the regular term of the new Assembly District 61. And as you can see, there is an overlap between the red and the blue. So the people who are in those two overlapping areas, they will have the choice to choose who will remain or who will fill the remainder of the current term, which is the current Assembly District 61. And they will have the choice to choose who will fill the new Assembly District 61. And I know that is pretty technical and may be a little just complex to understand. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and I could probably try to answer as best as I can. And if there are any questions, or if the questions do come up, we will have a Q&A later down the road. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'll pass it along to Monica Flores.
Thank you, Angel. So yeah, we had a lot of information there, and now you have kind of the big overview of the election that's coming up, and you know who qualifies to vote. And you also know those very special cases. We highlight those unique contests because that in itself, people not understanding it can cause voters thinking that they may have gotten, a ballot that is incorrect. So, they might say, hey, here you're having me vote for 8062, and then you have me vote for 8061. You guys messed up. And this is the information that we try to provide you so that you can empower your communities with knowledge and help address some of those questions as they begin to arise. And, tied to that is I'm going to share a little bit today about some other challenges that we see in our process about how you can help us with those challenges as well. So let's go ahead and dive into those challenges. Okay, so I will talk to you first about vote center recruitment. So as my colleagues have stated, for this June election, we have to establish, or we are establishing approximately 640 vote centers. This is not an easy task. Acquiring 640 vote centers requires us to collaborate with proprietors, with community organizations, with a lot of individuals. Why is it such a difficult task? Is because we're asking for a lot of proprietors and facilities. We're asking for them to allow us to use their space for 2 weeks. And usually these are very large spaces that are used for other events. They're used for other programs. So we may ask, a city to allow us to use a community center that they typically use for an after-school program, or that, has weddings scheduled over the weekend. So again, it's a big ask of facilities, and we very much understand that. As much as we can, we try to work with them. In this June, we have some unique scenarios where, for example, there was a facility that we wanted to use for 11 days, and they were willing to work with us. There was a funeral on one day, and obviously they're not going to kick out the funeral. So what we're doing is setting up outside for that day. Now, that's not an easy thing for us. We have voting equipment that we need to protect, that we need to power. Again, it's not an easy task, so we prefer to not have to do scenarios like that. But as needed, we have worked around them. Now, another ask, as I just stated, is, or another reason why it's challenging to obtain space is just that, like I just mentioned, is we need power for our devices. So all of our ballot marking devices are connected to power, and the electronic poll books are connected to network, so that we can check in our voters. So we have power network requirements. There are certain older facilities that don't have the minimum that we need to be able to support our solution. Additionally, the facilities need to meet ADA requirements. They need to be accessible. There has to be a clear walking path from the sidewalk, for example. There has to be a wheelchair accessibility. The doors need to be wide enough to allow for the maneuvering of something like a wheelchair. So there are a lot of requirements. We do conduct an extensive assessment to ensure that the facilities are accessible for all of our voters. Making it more challenging is that they really don't have a legal authority to just barge into a building and say, hey, we're taking this room, we need it for 2 weeks. And in the unique situation with school districts where there is a requirement for school districts to provide a space, we still find a lot of challenges. So school districts by law are required to make space available for us to provide vote centers. As you can imagine, there are school districts that have issues with that. For the reasons that we stated with some of the community centers, is that they have programs in there. And another one is just kind of an easiness about having strangers on their grounds, right? So we try to work really closely with the school districts to obtain those facilities. We want to establish, good relationships with them. We don't want to go in there and say, hey, the law says this. You need to do this. And I mean, if they say no, we really can't force ourselves in there. But really, schools and school districts are pivotal to our process. Schools are seen as safe places, they're trusted, they're well recognized. They usually have space available that is very usable. You know, they have the power, the network, the accessibility, all of that checks off. So we really like to be in schools for the myriad of reasons. And as much as we can, we try to work with the school districts to make it work. And then finally, there are communities where there just isn't a large inventory of facilities for us to use vote centers. So there may be geographically isolated communities that are so isolated that there's not a facility, you know, within 5 miles of them that we can utilize. And that becomes a challenge because somehow we need to provide election services to those voters as well. The next challenge that I'll be talking to you about is the challenge of recruiting election workers. So just as we need facilities, we also need staff for them. You know, unfortunately, we can't keep a staff of 16 to 20,000 individuals that we just hire, you know, for these roles. So we have to recruit for every election. The election workers are a combination of county workers within our department and in other county departments, of community volunteers, and of high school students. So these individuals all come together, form these, you know, great teams and run these sites. Now, the reason it's a challenge for us to always, you know, fill all the positions within a vote center and meet our recruitment goals is because first it's a demanding schedule for election workers. You know, if you are election worker at an 11-day site, you are working there for 11 days straight. The days are 10 to 7, the first 10 days, and that last day is 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you think about the fact that we start on a Saturday and then on a Tuesday, that means you're probably capping that with your work week. So now you're having, you know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks that you're just really not taking a rest day. So we fully understand that it is a demanding schedule. We work as much as we can to provide a day break in there so that there is at least a rest day, and to just be a little more flexible. We can't be fully flexible with schedules where everyone can just, you know, tell us I'm available, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because that just causes a lot of complexities on our end that we wouldn't require a full other team to maintain. So again, that we understand that the schedules are demanding. Multilingual election workers are also very challenging to recruit. We go into various communities, and Mike will talk about how we connect with various communities to try to recruit these election workers and just to connect with voters in these languages in general. But still, we have a hard time recruiting. And just to highlight those languages that we have a difficult time recruiting are Japanese, Korean, Khmer, Indonesian, Burmese, and Mongolian. Every election, we have a hard time recruiting election workers in these languages. So as much as you can support those efforts, we really appreciate it. High school workers are also challenging to recruit, but mostly in the summer months. And the reason I say that, so for example, for this June election, a lot of the high schools are either wrapping up an academic year, so the students are having, you know, finals or graduations, or they're already out of school. If the schools are already out of session, we don't have a school administrator to work with to recruit these students. So while high school students are excellent poll workers, they're very flexible, you know, they're okay with those long days, they're very nimble, they pick up the technology really quickly. We can't use them for every election or at the numbers that we would like to. And then finally, similar to the vote centers, there's certain geographic locations that is just a lot more challenging to recruit. And some of those locations include, oh, I just lost my notes. Here we go. Areas like in Carson, Santa Monica, Rancho Palos Verdes, Santa Clarita. Now, there is not a clear rhyme or reason to why those areas are more difficult to recruit, but they are. As we recruit election workers, we try to place them in either close to their home or close to their work. You know, we don't want to recruit someone to work in Santa Clarita and they live in Norwalk. That would be, you know, 3-hour commute each way is just not something we're doing to people. So these particular communities, we have a harder time recruiting election workers. Okay, and moving on to the next challenge is a big challenge, which is a challenge of combating misinformation. This one I'll get a few examples. And we're going to start with vote by mail myths. So the first vote by mail myth is that ballots are often issued to the wrong address or the wrong person. We're going to go through the myths first, and then I'll come back and tell you what the reality is. The next myth is that voting by mail is not safe or private. You have also heard that ballot drop boxes are not secure. There's a myth that anyone can return a ballot that was not issued to them. And another one that I will mention is that widespread ballot collection activities, that there are widespread ballot collection activities to discard ballots. Now let's talk about vote by mail. We sent out a survey to our voters, and 90% of LA County voters felt that their ballot was safe and secure. These are voters that voted vote by mail. So in general, the big majority of our community does feel that vote by mail is safe, and indeed it is. And there are scenarios where ballots are sent to an incorrect address. Why would this happen? This can happen because someone moved and failed to register to vote. It can happen, or re-register to vote, I'm sorry. It can happen because someone inverted numbers in a registration card. It can happen for a few reasons. Now, because a ballot is received at that address, it doesn't mean that it can necessarily be voted. What we ask is that if you do have voters that receive ballots that are incorrectly mailed to their address, that they simply return them back to our office like they would any other mail. They're required by law. It is, as you all know, a felony to open a mail that is not addressed to the recipient, so they need to return it back to us. Now, in a case where there is let's say a nefarious person who wants to vote this ballot and have their voice heard a little extra, and they vote that ballot, again, they're committing a crime. If we do receive it, and what we do is we verify the signature on that ballot. If the signature does not match to the affidavit for that voter, then we do not process that ballot. What we do is we send the voter, the registered voter, a letter and saying, hey, did you vote this ballot? Please sign this letter and tell us that you voted this ballot. We give them another opportunity, because sometimes family members make mistakes. They sign someone else's letter or someone else's ballot. And we also don't want to disenfranchise those voters, right? So we send them something, ask them to correct it. And if they send back the notification with the signature that we can verify, then we go ahead and process that ballot. We make various attempts to reach the voter. We will receive a ballot with a missing or mismatched signature. Now, about how we return these ballots, including drop boxes. So first of all, we hear stories about mailboxes being broken into, for example, and how people are collecting ballots to mark them and return them. Well, we have worked with investigative agencies and have found that people that are really breaking into mailboxes, they're not looking for the ballots. They're looking for checks. They're looking for credit cards. They're looking for identifications. These ballots are just kind of collateral that happens to be, damage is also there. There typically is not these wide efforts to go through mail and pull ballots to return them and mark them. And again, if there were, we verify those signatures. We have also like I said, we stated before, the drop boxes where voters can drop those on. Those drop boxes are very secure. They are designed to state regulations to maintain the integrity of the ballots that are inside. The material that they're made of is very difficult to damage, at least damage to the point where you're getting into the box. There's fire retardant on the boxes. Now, we also collect ballots from those boxes daily. So if there is a very extreme scenario where, semi runs into the drop box and pops it open and these ballots are exposed, there won't be tons of ballots. We will be, we collect those daily to ensure that any damage is minimal. I can share that we have had an example where there was a drop box that was on fire. And what we did is none of the ballots were at complete loss. They were damaged a little bit. Again, thanks to the fire retardant in the boxes. And we were able to identify every single one of those voters, reached out to every single one of those voters and asked them to resubmit a ballot. We got a ballot to them and they voted again. So we go through these extraordinary efforts to ensure that those ballots are safe. And again, if there is a scenario where there is a damage, that we ensure that that voter has an opportunity to vote. Finally, you hear scenarios of individuals collecting ballots, and you may think that that is something that is nefarious, and they're collecting boxes because they want to do some harm. Know that it is okay to turn in a ballot for someone else, as long as that voter designates that you are returning it on their ballot and that you both sign that ballot. We, as an office in general, encourage our voters to return their own ballot to avoid any issues, any concerns. But know that, again, that is an option. Individuals are allowed to turn in a ballot for someone else. Okay, and I think that's it for this myth. I will move on to myths about voting in person, because just like people will tell you that voting by mail is not safe, people will tell you that voting in person is not safe. So some of the myths about voting in person are that the ballot marking devices are easily hacked or manipulated. You hear that ballot marking devices tally election results. You may also hear that voters can visit multiple locations and cast a ballot at multiple vote centers. And finally, you may also hear that voters can't verify their choices. So let's talk about these a little bit. First of all, the ballot marking device is not connected to any network. The ballot marking devices are hooked to power, and that's it. The ballot marking device, what it does is presents a ballot to a voter, allows them to mark their selections, and prints a paper ballot. The paper ballot is the official ballot of record, and that is what we use to tally results. The ballot marking device itself does not store any voter information. It does not store any of the selection information for that voter. It simply is used to mark the paper ballot. So you may ask, why have this big pencil, electronic pencil, to mark a paper ballot? It's for accessibility reasons. We want to make sure that any voter, whether they're visually impaired, whether they're hard of hearing, whether they can't hold a pen or a pencil, that they can mark their ballot and they can do it in the same way that any other voter can within the county. It's also our ability to present any ballot style at a vote center, which is what allows a voter to go to any vote center within the county. So, again, you might have a voter that, lives in Hollywood, but works in downtown, and their days are just so long, they don't have time to go to the vote center in Hollywood because they work long days. It's like, well, they can vote at any vote center in downtown. Again, this BMD, or ballot marking device, is what allows that opportunity to occur. So as I stated, the BMDs do not hold voter information, do not hold election results. We don't tally any election results on there. They're simply to mark that paper ballot. We do have our electronic poll books, or e-poll books, which is the unit on which a voter is checked in when they get to a vote center. That is connected to a network, and what that does is it allows us to see if a voter has voted at any other location. So we can check you in, and in that check-in process, it says, hey, you already voted elsewhere. So we can catch it there. So voters cannot vote at any, or at multiple locations. And then finally, the myth about not being able to verify the choices, that is incorrect. The ballot marking device provides multiple opportunities for a voter to verify their choices. Voters can verify their choices on the screen as many times as they like before printing the paper ballot. And even once they print their paper ballot, they can verify their paper. It is human legible, the selections are. If they make an error, if they change their mind after they print their ballot, they can simply take it back to an election worker, and the election worker will issue a new ballot for the voter to mark. Okay. And then finally, I want to talk about some misinformation or combating misinformation regarding election tally and results. As I just stated, the ballot marking devices don't tally results. So how does that happen? So some of the myths are the one I just stated: tally occurs at vote centers. Another myth is that election results are final on election night. And finally, that tally systems can be hacked to manipulate election results. Well, none of these things are true. We talked about the first bullet point, and the tally is not happening at vote centers. What we actually do is on election night, we bring back all of those paper ballots back to our tally operations center, which is located in Downey. There we gather all the ballots and run them through scanners, which actually tally those ballots. That begins at 8 p.m. on election day. So when I say begins, is election night for us is the beginning of the counting of ballots, not the final counting of ballots. Tally, we never have final election results on election night. So we begin counting ballots at 8 p.m. The first run is the vote by mail ballots that we have received, we have verified, we have prepared, and we run them through at 8 p.m. And that's the first set of results that you will see. The second set of results that you will see is all of the ballots that came in from the first 10 days of voting. So again, we had time to gather those ballots, prepare them, put them in order and run them, and we run them through our tally right after we run the vote by mail. The third tally and everything after that, it includes all of the election day ballots. So as we receive them on election night, we start running them, we keep running them through our ballots. There are days that, when it's countywide, high turnout election where we are there until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning as we're rounding ballots to count those election day ballots. Now, as I stated, election night is the beginning of our tally process. We have 30 days to count any ballots for this election. That includes vote by mail ballots, which is important to note. We can receive up to 7 days after election day, as long as they're postmarked by election day. So for 7 days, or after the election, we continue to receive vote by mail ballots. We're processing those, we're counting those. We're also processing and counting provisional ballots, which is when a voter goes into a vote center and for whatever reason, we cannot verify their registration. We put their information on their ballot on an envelope, fill out their information on that envelope, verify that the voter is registered, and then we can process that ballot. Same as anyone who decides that they want to register to vote at a vote center. It's election day, they realize they want to vote, they can go into a vote center, register. So we have to process that registration before we can process the ballot. Again, this is activity that's done in the 30-day window. So 30 days, then we send the results and certify the election, send them up to the state. And that is when our elections are final. Now, it's important to note that there are many safety measures in place to ensure that our elections, our results are accurate. First of all, our tally system is air gapped, so it is not connected in any way to the outside world, is not connected to the internet, it is not a system that you can hack into to change the results. If there's no connection into it, you can't hack into it, right? So on top of that, we have an audit process where we go through a 1% manual audit. We take 1% of the ballots, we hand count them, we verify that with the machine results to make sure that there are no discrepancies. And I can very proudly say that, since we implemented the VSAP in 2020, we have not found a single discrepancy in our tally solution. Results are always completely matched up. It's also important to know that you can watch any part of this process. So you can, as a community member, you can go and watch the process at vote centers. You can go to our vote by mail operations center currently in Crossroads. I say currently because we may be moving. And you can watch us process the vote by mail ballots. You can also, observe this tally process as we're running our ballots to the tally. So it's all a very open and transparent process. You can view that, you can encourage your community to view those processes. We do post the schedule and locations for all of these activities on our website, lavote.gov. I invite you to look at that and participate, come and visit us as much as you like or are available to. So that was a little bit about kind of the challenges that we see as election administrators, and some in very particular in the misinformation that we want to clarify because it brings a lot of challenges to our process. now with this, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Mike Sanchez, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how we engage voters to keep them informed, to keep them educated at about the process, and to ensure that they're engaging with us throughout the process. So Mike, I hand it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Monica. So we've just covered a lot. You just learned in the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes, logistics about how we conduct the elections, the number of vote centers, and the number of ballot drop boxes that are open, voter eligibility, registration, all kinds of things. And this is critical that members of the public, whether you're registered to vote or if you're eligible and registered and not registered to vote, that they know that not only what their rights are, but where they can receive that voting and election information. And it's our responsibility. And what I'm looking forward to sharing with you now is some of the high level plans that we will be engaging voters throughout now through election day, June 7th. So please go on to the next slide. So to start off, I would like to share what some of our campaign goals and objectives are. Since we entered a society that public health is important since the November 2020 election to current day, it's never been more important to inform voters that they have early voting, early voting options, whether that's voting by mail, whether that's using the ballot drop boxes that are surrounded throughout Los Angeles County, or if a voter wants to go vote in person, that is still their right, and they have the option and ability to do that. But what we will be encouraging is to do that early. Take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. We start mailing ballots, as you saw earlier, on May 5th. From when a voter gets that ballot, there is no need for them to hold on to it. In fact, they could drop off that ballot on that exact same day at one of 400 convenient locations throughout the county, or they can simply place it right back in the mail. And the beauty of that is there's no stamp required, regardless of the method in which they return that. So we're going to be really enforcing that. That is a key point and a key message and a key objective in this campaign is taking advantage of the early opportunities and to remind voters that they can vote right away by utilizing one of the two secure vote return options. Vote centers. There's going to be 2 waves of them, but ultimately the weekend prior to election day, there's going to be 640 locations conveniently welcome and open to voters to go and cast their ballot in person. We're going to be providing the voters with knowledge and resources so that they could locate those locations, understand what services or tools are available to them in as it relates to locator tools or mechanisms to speed up that process. And we also want them to know that if they do decide to vote in person, that they can do so safely without having to worry about possibly being placing their health at risk when they go to visit those locations. So at a very high level, that's the objective number 1. Take advantage of early voting. We offer it, it's available. Avoid the rush, avoid lines, obviously make life easier for yourself. And that's going to be that number 1 objective. And that has been consistent with previous election campaigns. I would like to note from the November 2020 election cycle, even last year in the recall election as well. What's new in this particular campaign is a topic that we discussed earlier in the presentation, and that's combating misinformation. What we want to do, what's imperative as an elections official here in Los Angeles County, is that we instill and build trust with our voters, with our electorate, that the Registrar, Recorder, County Clerk is the number 1, the official source for election materials, election resources, and ultimately the number 1 location where if you have questions, that we are open and there's mechanisms in which people can contact us, whether that's through mail, through a phone call, or even through email. So objective number 2 is equally as important and new to this campaign effort, is instilling that trust, reinforcing that we're official, that when you see our seal, that when you see our lavote.gov, that's the number 1 location that you can receive information. It's nonpartisan, it's unbiased. We're simply providing the facts. So through a variety of different tactics, different strategies, we'll be implementing messages like that again, throughout a 5-6 week campaign. Next slide, please. So focusing a little bit more on the messaging, as I just stated, some of it at a very top line level, we will be continuing to encourage voters to stay the course. We've seen continuous increase in vote by mail return usage from March 2020 to November 2020. There was in March of 2020, excuse me, we saw just over 50% utilizing vote by mail. When we got to the November 2020 election, nearly 80% of voters who cast a ballot did so by returning a vote by mail ballot. Obviously, that is a significant increase there, and quite frankly, there are variables to that. One of them is the fact that we have, as Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder has adopted the Voters' Choice Act, the full Voters' Choice Act, in which we mail every registered voter a vote by mail ballot. It's convenient, it's easy, it ensures it is a safe mechanism in which you could cast and fill in your choices in the comfort of your home and return it right back to our office. So we want voters to stay that course and utilize the vote by mail ballot. And again, if an individual would like to make their plan to vote early in person, that's how we would like for them to do that. Vote before Election Day, avoid the rush, avoid the crowds. Positioning ourselves as the definitive resource for official election information. As I said, combating misinformation, instilling trust. I'm providing voters with the tools that they need to make a plan to vote. Now, from a macro level, what I described, vote by mail, voting in person, and encouraging that early participation. But there are a variety of micro messages and resources that will be included at that to accomplish those macro goals. And some examples would be, if you're voting by mail, there are tools and resources available to track that ballot every step of the way, so that you can, again, build trust that I can see the ballot's going to be mailing in my mailbox or coming to my mailbox on this date. Once that voter returns that ballot, they would then get a notification, whether that's through a text message or an email, saying that our office has received it. So again, it builds trust. It gives voters that sense of security that they understand and they know that that ballot has been received. So that's one example. There are a variety of other tools and resources that our office provides, like locator tools on the Vote Center locator application itself. There's a wait time feature, so you can even make an educated decision on where you go to vote in person. And that is a relatively new enhancement that we had in time for the 21 election cycle. But again, providing information, providing resources so that voters can make educated decisions that best fits their needs. And on the bottom, you kind of see that macro level phased approach. And again, it just reemphasizes what I described right now about the vote by mail awareness, understanding that there is a registration date. Earlier in the presentation, you heard that the registration deadline for this election is May 23rd. That's a critical deadline for anyone who would like to register and receive a vote by mail ballot. In essence, if an eligible voter does not register by May 23rd, we will not be mailing them a vote by mail ballot. However, they could still cast a ballot at any vote center. There is that nuance, and we're going to be very deliberate in providing that information and that deadline. Phase 2, reinforcing the voting by mail, letting individuals know that it's available, creating a motivation behind it, creating a sense of urgency, if you will, letting them know that they can return it early, and here's your safe resources and how you can do that. And then we'll start opening up towards the latter part of that phase, the logistics on vote centers. So some examples are the duration in which they're open, 10 days before Election Day. The fact that a voter can go to any location. It is no longer a requirement to go to a single location within your precinct. Although there are several vote centers within that may be in your precinct or within a close proximity, and that voter has all the power in the world to go to that location, but they are not limited to that one. And then phase 3, entering the last week and a half before Election Day, we're starting to ramp up that frequency of messaging and ramping up the urgency that the last day to vote is June 7th. However, you can still make your voice heard early, whether that's through a ballot drop box, or at a vote center. And here are the resources available to you. So those are again, the macro level pillars of our phased approach. Next slide, please. So everyone, I think, in this training, us included, our department included, understands the complexities, the size, and the diversity of Los Angeles County. I mean, we have over 6 million voters who are either registered or eligible to register to vote. And we understand that we have a very large multicultural, multi-generational demographic. And lastly, as a department, we support 19 different languages. That's including English. And we understand when we develop this campaign and our approach, we need to take a surround sound approach so we can ensure voters that are either brand new to the process or experienced and have been voting for years understand critical messages that our office obviously wants to convey to them. Now, we build this utilizing a variety of different tactics and channels. And some of the features that this campaign will be utilizing is broadcast. If you were to compare it, we compare broadcast as a hammer. It is a large entity that can get the eyes and ears of a lot of individuals at one time. And to be very clear, broadcast includes television and radio. We're also going to be leveraging digital, and how broadcast is the hammer, digital is more of the scalpel. We can be very surgical in how we communicate to voters in very precise targeting in geographic location or in language. And that's how we accomplish a lot, almost the majority, of our multilingual messaging is through digital resources that are available to us through social media, available to us on programmatic advertisements. You might be familiar if you're looking at sports scores on ESPN.com or you're looking at news on LA Times. Programmatic ads are what you see are usually around the outskirts of the website or somewhere placed on the site. Or if you're watching a video on YouTube and before you transition to that next one, an ad comes up and you're forced to watch it. Those tactics and strategies are critical and an important piece of our approach, again, to ensure that we're communicating with voters where they are and in their native tongue. Now, although broadcast and digital are the two layers to this campaign in which we will be emphasizing the most on, we understand that doesn't capture everyone. There's still an offline feature, if you will, and an offline audience that we need to capture, that it's our responsibility to capture. And we utilize that and implement that through a few different channels. One of that is through print and identifying print newspapers, community newspapers, magazines, and utilize those as our vehicle to communicate more to specific audiences that may be more experienced voters. They may be more reliant on the offline networks, again, using, like I said, newspapers and community newsletters. But we also see a high number of individuals within our county that do not speak English well, or it may not be their primary language, utilize print to gain their news, to understand what's happening in their environment. And we're going to be absolutely leveraging that as well in this campaign. In addition to print, we will be using an out-of-home experience. That's more of your traditional, what you see on billboards or neighborhood bulletins is what they're called, which is essentially a billboard, but on a little bit smaller real estate. Those will be specifically placed within the county with different tactics in mind to reach hard to convert, or maybe hard to reach target audiences by placing transit shelter ads for those who may utilize public transit. When you're driving down the 5 freeway going into LA, you may see a billboard that gives a very specific broad message, letting someone know of a deadline or that they can vote early, and this is where they can get more information. So out of home is going to be a piece of this campaign. It's strategic, and we will absolutely be utilizing it. What's equally important as it relates to a paid approach, which includes the 4 tactics I just described, is the collaborative outreach and community partnerships. Exactly what we're doing here today, educating our community leaders, which everyone in this training is. We rely on you to be able to, we rely on you really as our trusted messenger. We provide you resources so that you can go into your communities and amplify what our messaging is, understanding that our messaging is nonpartisan, factual, and quite frankly, we're providing resources that only serve to help let voters make a plan to vote. So that's going to be a very big piece to this campaign as well, is that community partnership and leveraging CBOs, nonprofit organizations, and even our city electeds and our city clerk offices on a local level to be able to communicate that information to them at a wide scale. It is important to know that in addition to the CBOs, local and ethnic media as well, understanding there is a reliance on cable or a local TV news in English or in multiple languages. We do have a plan in place to leverage those, not only from a paid approach, but also from an organic approach. So reaching out and making sure reporters and journalists and news stations are aware of different timelines, or aware of options. That is all part of this outreach pie, and we're going to be leveraging it, as I said, throughout the next several weeks as we lead into Election Day. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to share with you in the upcoming slides are just some examples of what we've utilized in previous elections campaigns. And right here, what you see is some social media graphics that not only did our department post or have sponsored in our paid programming, but you also see some of the community build in here, both at the local level, at the city level, at the community level, and even at the county level. We have resources, and we will be creating graphics and videos and social posts and a variety of other elements to help you amplify that reach. And what we will be doing is providing it in a form that you can even customize it. And as you can see in these examples, there are a couple of these posts that are customized based on the target audience that that community serves. So again, it builds that recognition, it builds that buy-in, and ultimately what we gain to serve from this is an amplified push from a community level. But I do want to show that examples like this will be available not only in English, but also in a variety of different multilingual languages as well. Next slide, please. Here you see some photos and images of a tool in which we developed and built in the November 2020 general election. And that's what you see on the left-hand side of this slide. And what that essentially was a website in which all of our campaign messaging directed voters to. And what it did was hold the hand of a voter throughout the entire process of them developing their plan to vote. The beauty of that particular tool was they opted in to receive information in addition to obviously going through that plan of making that plan to vote. So that information was provided to us, and we still have that and can leverage that, so we can have very specific targeted messages to those individuals who indicated they wanted to vote early, indicated they wanted to vote by mail, or indicated they wanted to vote in person. And that allows us to, again, to be very specific on what we send them and the resources that they can provide and have available to them. So we're not going to utilize this website again this time. It is something we're in discussions with for future election, but the data that we collected is still valuable, and we will be utilizing that. So we could do targeted messaging in both email and SMS text messages, similar to what you see on the right-hand side there. And again, it is going to be very deliberate. It's going to be very timely, and it will be in multiple languages, so voters can receive information straight from the source and utilize their computer or mobile phone to engage, to act, or to potentially learn more about that. Next slide, please. And finally, here are some examples of the offline, what I referred to earlier as the offline experience, and your out of home, your print, your billboards. Just walking through some of the examples here, we understood, although in the peak COVID timeframe that November of 2020 was in, and for a majority of 21, and in some instances, we are still in an environment that, public health is top of mind. We understood that where we placed our out of home needed to be very, very methodical. So what we did was utilize pharmacies at local CVSs throughout the county, other drugstores or locations or grocery stores or markets within hyper-local communities that sell products that were open throughout the duration in the 2020 year and 2021. And that's an example that you see on the right, where we had a sanitation station with messaging on the election in November. We'll be utilizing tactics similar in this campaign as well. Moving to the left, the center is a print ad, and in a very hyper-local neighborhood newspaper. And again, we were going to be leveraging that as well, and having a variety of different size advertisements ranging from full size to columns in a variety of different languages, providing specific key information. And then to round it out on the left, you see some examples of what our transit billboards looked like. So again, understanding that individuals or communities utilize these as their primary source for transportation, we want to make sure we have a footprint there and be able to have messaging and provide a guidance to those individuals as it relates to the upcoming June primary election. Next slide, please. Oh, that rounds it out. So I know I went through a lot. I'm extremely happy and excited to announce that a variety of these elements are going to be available, as I alluded to, in a digital toolkit that myself and my colleagues will be sharing with all of you later in the upcoming weeks as we develop that. So again, if there's any specific questions on how we will conduct outreach and or our media advertising plan, please feel free to drop a question in the chat or reach out to me towards the end of the presentation. That being said, I'm going to hand it to my colleague Leah to now discuss how we can continue to develop our community partnerships.
Thank you, Michael. I will be presenting on developing a community partnership. So to create a greater audience, it is important to develop strong partnerships within the community. Community partners such as yourselves can amplify our message. They can engage within the community and collaborate with Los Angeles County Registrar County Clerk to make voting accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. So what does developing a community partnership mean? For us, it means being our trusted messenger and a resource within the community. So as our trusted messenger, we rely on you to connect and engage with your community. One of the ways you can do that is by hosting events, collaborating with our outreach team, and participating in voter registration training so that you can educate your community on key election dates and the registration process, similar to the presentation we are conducting today. Another way that you can partner with us is by assisting with voter centers and election worker recruitment. As previously discussed, there are challenges to finding election workers, and so your assistance will be greatly appreciated. For instance, as previously mentioned, we need assistance in recruiting workers who are proficient in different languages. Some of the languages that we need election workers to be proficient in is Japanese, Korean, Khmer, Indonesian, Burmese, and Mongolian. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it correctly. In addition to assisting with vote centers and election worker recruitment, you can also host and serve as a mobile or flex vote center. The mobile vote center offers a safe voting experience like a traditional vote center. A mobile vote center is self-sufficient. It operates on its own power supply and data connection. A host simply provides a location and assists in promoting the mobile vote event date. Another way you can collaborate and assist us is by communicating concerns, challenges, fears you hear in the community. One resource that is available to you as a community partner is the poll monitoring program. The poll monitoring program allows community partners to attend a poll monitoring orientation. These individuals, also known as vote center monitors, are people interested in the election proceedings, and they are entitled to observe vote center operations during voting hours. Observers can watch the setup and the breakdown of the vote centers. Moreover, they can call in on a designated poll monitor hotline to report things that they have observed. So it's important to note that this hotline is for partner organizations and not for the general public. And concerns that we've previously had in the past has been people have called to report, let's say they went to an election center 3 times, a vote center, and an election worker was not there that was, let's say, Spanish speaking. So this would be something that you would report and call in on the poll center hotline so that we can make sure that we correct this issue. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we want to get information from our community partners is through our community partner survey. This is a survey that will be out as soon as possible. It is not ready yet, but we will be following with all of you soon. It is a survey to better serve your organization and to the community where you work with. The objective of it is to better understand your geographic and community footprint in the county. The goal is to develop and include outreach materials that fit your needs in your upcoming digital toolkit and find ways to expand our community partnership. Once that is ready, we will be sharing that with all of you. Next slide, please. So I encourage you to take note of the contact and resource information listed in the slide below. We have an email address for our mobile voting program. We have one for our vote center recruitment. We have one for our election worker recruitment. We have the email for our voter outreach, which I manage. And then we have one for our media and communications, which as Mike mentioned, Michael is the manager for that team. Also, we have listed our email address below. Next slide. On behalf of all the presenters today, I want to thank you all for being here. As we conclude this presentation, we open the floor now to questions that you may have, and we will check also the Q&A portion of the screen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Leah. And I think everything was just so thorough and so much information. It's been helpful and a lot of questions were answered within the presentation. So thank you all for that. I want to just restate one of the questions or answers to the questions on the chat that we will be sharing these slides with everyone. We will send a post-webinar email where you will find all of the links that were shared through the chat, the slide deck, the post-webinar survey, and the link to register for the next training, our final training in the series leading up to the June primary. We thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. And with that, extending our gratitude to the County Registrar, to the County Clerk's Office, all of the presenters, Liberty Hill and the Weingart Foundation. And with that, we conclude our training for today. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.